Taylor. This is a show all about the writing processes, whether you're a writer, a reader, a fan. I'm sure there's going to be something in here for you, all kinds of tips and interesting things about writing. And it's available to you on Facebook and YouTube under Catherine Taylor TV and Catherine Taylor Media, and also the podcast, Let's Get Writing, on most platforms. So thanks for joining us. Today, my guest is the founder of Engen Books, which is an independent publishing company in Newfoundland, Canada. It started in 2007, and in 2021, there are going to be 21 titles for publication. Does that sound like an interesting story? I definitely think so. It is. And now I'd like you to meet the founder and also an author himself, Matthew LeDrew. And we'll bring you on up. Matthew, where are you? There you are.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, a pleasure. Welcome to Let's Get Writing. I have heard about you so many times, and I could never spell the name of your company. And I was like, I have to find this guy and have him on this show because you're doing such amazing things. But why don't we tell me a little bit about yourself, because you're, like, as I said, an author, a publisher, you're the host of the Write Project podcast. Let's meet you.
When you say it all like that, it sounds like a lot, and I'm wondering how I schedule my day. I started writing at a young age, and I wrote in the beginning chiefly horror, thriller kind of stuff. And when I was about 20, 23, I tried to seek publication, and the answer I got, the publishing companies that I looked to locally didn't even read it. They don't publish that sort of genre. So I got in my head that there was a niche in the local market that could be filled, and that I'm sure there are other people like me. So I've eventually moved away from horror myself, but we started a publishing company to publish science fiction, fantasy, horror, romance. Basically, we started to fill the niches left by the other publishing companies, but we've since expanded to publish more traditional Newfoundland material as well. We're coming for everyone.
Which makes sense. And your experience, I think, is an experience that a lot of writers have, that they've put their heart and soul into something, they send it out, and it doesn't fit the market for that particular publisher. And you often hear, research very well your publisher, know who you're going to, because it's not that your book is bad, it's just that this is business. And so they know what's worked, they know what's paid the bills, I guess. And so they're not always ready to take that chance. So yay to you for deciding to create something that would offer some of those voices a chance. And I think when I reading about your vision, your mission for your company, it's a bit about bringing literary work, but bringing voices forward, that maybe younger voices and so on. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of our work tends to be geared towards younger authors, although that's changing now. It's changing as the climate of writing in Newfoundland kind of changes. Like, now that we're getting out there more and we're getting more publicity and more people are being aware of us, we're finding that there are established authors that also wanted to write genre all along, but there was no producer or publisher for their work either. So for the first few years, we were very youth oriented, but that was almost a consequence rather than by design, because we were new. We attracted authors that were also new. Like, when we were starting, we couldn't attract a big name author, so we ended up attracting young authors who it was their first time ever getting published. But as we've grown, we've got a healthy mix kind of thing. But it's always been in our mandate, like in the From the Rock anthologies that we do, where we do collections of short stories by local authors on different themes every year. There's a mandate to have so many people who, like, they don't have a novel out, it's their first time being published, where we do try to bring some new talent to the industry every year.
And that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because when I went into your your webpage, and let me just get that up here in case anyone wants to check that out, and I hope that they do. When I went in there, I noticed that you did have anthologies, and I thought, now what is that? And you had kind of a screen where you were bringing, there were blank faces, and then you bring forth faces. Is that part of the anthology project, or a specific one?
It is.
Tell me a bit about it.
That is a fun thing that we do every year, where we like to make a show of it. Like for some people, like we like to make a show of announcing every author, whether it's someone who has like is well known in the industry, because there are a few like award-winning authors for this latest collection that we haven't announced yet. But we like to make equally a show if it's someone's first time ever being published. So we do these big like banner like announcements where like there's all the names are blacked out, and every couple days we'll fill in a new name of the author and give their bio and welcome them to collection. We do that every year, and it's a bit of fun. You know what I mean? It's promotion, but it's also fun. And if it's your first time doing it, then it's nice. You know what I mean? Like I my mandate with the promotion of Engen is to treat authors the way I would have wanted to have been treated when I was a new author. You know what I mean? Like if I
Mm-hmm.
had signed with a traditional publisher in the province and they'd put my name up in lights, I would have been very happy. So why not? You know what I mean? What are you
Exactly.
hurting by doing that?
Exactly. That sounds really nice. And when you think about it, when someone's new, and I don't know if readers, or if they haven't written a book, how vulnerable a writer can feel putting their work out, because there's a certain element of self in there, whether it's opinions or thoughts, or there's always an element of an author in a book. I feel that. I don't know if you agree with me or not. And so when you put your stuff out there, you're vulnerable. Are people going to like it? Are they going to say that you have no future, and so on? And it's a tough time. So anything you can do to build people up, build these authors up, I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I this time last year I was teaching school children. I was hired to go on the mainland and teach some school children writing. And I mean, don't mean some of them were teenagers, but some of them were grade one, and teaching them how to write stories. And they were all adorable and wonderful. But I had a bunch of rules that I would put on the thing, like guidelines
Mm-hmm.
for when we're reading each other's stuff. And one of them was all writing is good, some just needs a polish kind of thing. So we also try to be very um like I would never say to someone you have no future in the industry. Like everything is someone's favorite book, and
Mm-hmm.
to like pretend that that's otherwise is snobbery, you know?
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that that served you well. That philosophy. I was on your Facebook page, and I saw a post that you had recently written, and it had to do with you shared a video about Anne Rice, who's famous for her vampires and werewolves, and that game kind of a genre. And you said, listen to the advice Anne Rice got here from her teachers. It's kind of short-sighted, and I've heard it too many times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was really you trying to correct that message.
I spend a lot of my career since I've become a known entity trying to correct that message. I find that well, my experience to be very like subjective at Memorial University, which I love and I'm very grateful to, and I got my Bachelor of Arts in Honors in writing there. Um, and I'm not trying to disparage that organization or anything like that, but in the creative writing side of it, genre writing was discouraged. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing up front. There was nothing like, oh, only join this class if you're literary, but they would take your money and let you come to the class. And then if you tried to write something that was a little genre, maybe a little fantasy, maybe a little sci-fi, it would kind of get shot down. One person told me, who I won't name, but one person told me, "This is really good writing. Don't do it again."
Oh.
Which is yeah. So it's like, and there's this system where because they're telling people not how to write, which is their job as teachers, but what to write, the people who agree and write what they're told to, then kind of go through the system and get recommended to publishers that tend to publish people that come out of that system. And it's created a very homogenous literary landscape for Newfoundland. Like our lit fiction scene all the books look very, very similar and have very, very similar tones. And a lot of the pushback that I've been doing in my adult life is saying, no, no, no. I would rather, like, I teach writing classes now.
Mhm.
They're not at MUN, they're just like indie, classes. I go with, this is how you write. I will never tell you what to write. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
I hear
simple
you.
stuff like show don't tell and stuff like that.
Well, back to Anne Rice, I didn't
Yeah.
clarify, but her teachers advised if she ever wanted to be successful, she needed to write serious literature about typical middle class people in everyday life. And anything other than stories of ordinary people was considered fantasy, science fiction, or perhaps romance, and decidedly of, oh, I hope you're sitting down, and lesser value. And so, I mean, I loved romance and romantic comedy and mystery with elements of romance, which I knew definitely was not in the literary genre, but I wanted to look at and write. And I looked at Romance Writers of America, for example, huge. They sell tremendous numbers of books. Their literature is so popular, and that would be in that kind of genre. So it's so interesting. And for Anne Rice, I mean, when she really took off is when she realized that this is what I write. This is
Your
me.
book, yeah. A couple of points. That your book is astonishing. I picked it up and read it, and it's very, very good. I'd say it's one of the better. I read. You'd be shocked, but I've actually read a fair bit of romance. I try to read eclectically. I read because I'm a publisher as well as a
Mhm.
writer, so like I have to read everything in the industry so I know what the trends are. Your writing's very, very good. I put it in like the top percentile of romance comedy writing and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I
But
don't hear
like,
that. I never hear things like that. So I had a little goosebumps. Stop it.
but
But thank you.
uh, with Anne Rice, it just always shocks me because after I posted that video, just to remind myself, I went back and dug out. I've got the first edition
Mhm.
hard copy of her book on my shelf there, and I read it in a couple of days, and I was like, this is very literary. Like she's dealing with it's through metaphor. Like vampirism in her
Mhm.
books are a metaphor for life, but dealing with like Claudia and the little girl who will never grow up was she wrote that after her 5-year-old or 6-year-old died of leukemia. Like, and it's a
Right.
metaphor for her grief and all this kind of stuff. And like sometimes when certain people say that like that genre fiction isn't like serious fiction or doesn't count or anything like that, I have to wonder if people know what a metaphor is, the people who say that. Like, are you familiar with a metaphor?
Well, perhaps not, but I think it's very interesting to go and look at, I'm going to say, the Engen Books bookshelf. There's so much interesting fiction there and fresh stuff. Like you say, it's certainly not typical of any region. Like if you take Newfoundland, it's international fiction, more or less, isn't it?
And it
Really?
sells internationally. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let me just see. I wanted to ask you a little bit. We've talked a lot about what's happening with the publishing company, but I want to talk about you as a writer. And you've explained some of the challenges you've experienced. So, where are you now on that journey? You started pretty young, and at one point, I think I heard you in your podcast say, geez, when people research me and they go back and find some of the stuff I wrote when I was really young, I almost cringe because writers evolve too, just like anyone does in any profession. But tell me a bit about yourself
Well, I just
with
got
your
some
writing.
bright light on me. That's wonderful.
We can see, yeah,
Um,
you got a line. It's almost like a,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
right on. That's all right.
All right. The sun will go away.
Da, da,
It's
da, da,
it's
da,
February and it's
da.
foggy. But yeah, no. I started out writing slasher fiction very
Mhm.
much. Like it was, I was trying to do like a grown-up version of like the slasher movies that I liked to watch. You know what? I liked horror films. I liked all kinds of films, but I was very much drawn to horror films and stuff like that. And at the time, um, doing youthful reinterpretations of stuff was really big. So like Smallville was on TV, which is like
Right.
young Superman. So I had this idea. I was like, oh, what if I like took like a slasher concept and said, what was that character like when he was young? But as a result, and some of it is this like I was young, and you know, like probably hormonal and probably unbelievably stupid. But there's a fair amount of like I have content warnings on my first few books. There's some violence in there and stuff like that, and I've just kind of moved away from that, and it's hard because like the characters continued. Like the character
Mm,
of Xander Drew was in that series, and because the content was so different, I basically like called it a different. So there's like a series when he's young, and then a series when he's older, and that's the Xander Drew series, and I'm very proud of that work. So it's this give and take of like maybe read my newer stuff, and if you like it and you're super interested in like finding out where he came from, then go back. It's
right.
like kind of like Star Wars. Like try the classic stuff, and if you're really interested, then watch the prequels. But like don't just jump into the prequels. You won't have a good time.
Well, it's interesting because we do evolve as writers. We do. And even as we evolve as people, I think it's reflected in the work that we create. So, I mean, that stands to reason that things would change. But I love the point you said, and I got to go back to it. The characters kind of live on. I don't know if someone's not a writer, and we do spend a lot of time by ourselves when we're sitting, and these people become very real. They become very real to us. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. So I could see why you would want to continue with your characters, bring them back.
I like it. We have been very grateful, or I have been very grateful of the Marvel films because it educated the public as to something that we were trying to do early on. So we started in 2007, which is I think within a year of when that first Iron Man movie came out, and our all of my fiction's interconnected. So like we have the Coral Beach Case Files series and the Xander Drew series and Jacoby Street that you read and the Infinity series. And they don't cross over. Like you don't need to read one to understand the other, but they all take place in the same like shared universe, just like the Marvel films do, where like Thor and Iron Man have nothing to do with each other except that they're all in the same world. We were helped a lot by Marvel's marketing, like educating the world as to what a shared universe was. I don't think it would have taken off quite so big, my fiction personally, if the public hadn't already been educated. Because now I can
Interesting.
just say it's a shared universe, and people go, "Oh, like Marvel, I understand."
Yeah. And I have to tell you, your book kept me up. There were a few nights when the iPad hit me in the face. I was like, I have to give this up. But you drew me in, and it was thoughtful. I mean, it was just the way that you did it. It was very kind of subtle. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something with this painting. And I really enjoyed your book. I absolutely did. I will be reading more. Um,
Jacoby Street you're talking about.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was my comeback. Like I went away from horror for a long time, and I kind
Mhm.
of like grew up as a writer, and I was like, oh, I kind of want to write horror again, but like I'm more mature now. I want to write some mature horror, like just
Right.
suspense stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I would never pick up horror. Although I tell you, as I have a good friend in LA with Snowfall Films, Suzanne Lyons, and Suzanne's made a number of horror films because they are relatively easy to make, lower budget, and they market well. People like that genre very much. Not me, I'd be up for weeks. But
This is my thing with going back to like lit fiction. I find the disdain that some people have for horror and for romance, to point at you, but I can't seem to do it with the mirroring effect. But like I find that disdain very odd because in most publishers, like only locally, our publishers like divided into this, like this one's a genre publisher and this one's lit fiction publisher. Like when you get to like national ones, like the big five, like HarperCollins, Simon
Mhm.
Schuster, all those, they publish everything. Like they might have different imprints, but they can take a chance on a little like indie lit fiction book because 50 Shades and Stephen King made them billions. You know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
those two genres didn't exist, they wouldn't have the money to spend on an
The
art house book.
literary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those books do sell and they become movies. I mean, I've written the movie script for Misty. And interesting with my books, my character, another series I had, Chappelle Hill, and it's more of a mystery, but I was bringing her to Newfoundland where she and Misty were going to interconnect. So as strange as authors, we see those relationships and we want to keep them going. What about in your life? What's been the greatest challenge for you? If you had to pick something or something you want to share with listeners, what has it been? Have I thrown you?
Scheduling. There is not enough hours in the day for everything I do. If I had a magic lamp with one wish, I would wish for the workday to be like instead of 24 hours in a day, I'd wish for there to be 48 because then I
Mm.
could get stuff done. I am looking at my schedule right now. I am just drastically overscheduled. I can't write when I get in the mood to because I've got too much on the go running the business and managing authors and stuff like that. It's sad because you start out life as a writer and because no one was publishing horror or publishing genre, we started a publishing company. And now there's a few people on our board. We have a 5-person board of directors, and we're getting big and getting recognized, and that's lovely. But we're getting so big that I have very little time to write, which is the reason I started doing this. It's like there's two ways to fail. You can fail or you can fail through success. But either way, you're going to fail a little bit.
Yeah, I hear the dilemma because you're right. Once you get where you are now with all those things that you're responsible for and all those authors you're bringing on in their books and you need a team of people that reaches a point where if you want to be writing where you need that that time to think and you got to do it when it hits or basically every day if you really want to be knocking this stuff out. It's hard to find that time.
I get up at 5:30 every day and I have exactly 50 minutes to write 50 minutes to write 500 words and I do it every day and that's the only amount of time that I can
I
manage
love it.
to crank it out.
Okay.
But it took years to get to that discipline level where it's like nope, like where all the ideas you get during the day for fiction go in a little bank and then when you sit down there's just there you go kind of
What
thing.
I know what I'm doing now, I take pictures on my phone. I'm using Airtable and I upload it to an inspiration document, and then I can go back because you got to capture it when it's coming. You got to capture it. But for people out there who are listening, who are writers, what he said, this 50 minutes every day, I mean, that is something that builds. It's better than never doing it or leaving it and trying to do it in chunks. It's the practice of daily getting in there and sharpening and keeping your skills going. So that's a great tip right
I
there.
mean, it takes 3 months to build a habit. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks. I can't remember what it is, but it's three. Like if you do that, force
They
yourself
say
to do it at a certain
21,
time.
21 days, but I think 3 months is a much better habit.
Yeah, but like
You're there.
it gets to the point now where I don't need to set my alarm. I just get up, like because I'm scheduled to do so because it's been 2 years of this now.
Right. Well, in
Yeah.
all this busyness and what you're doing, you also have the podcast, and I want to let people know about that. Again, just take a minute to talk about it. It is called the Right
Right
Project.
Project Podcast.
Yeah, WRITE. If anyone's looking for it. Yeah, talk about that briefly.
I was approached by CHMR, which is the university radio station at MUN, 2 or 3 years ago, and they were looking for program for the arts community. They had programming for various other arts community, and they were looking for a writer to come on and talk about writing and interview other authors. So I interview anyone who will come on and talk about writing, and usually ask silly questions that I can then compile and try to get a sense of like like, what was the first book that ever made you cry? And then get a
Mm.
sense, like, ask the same all authors that come on that question, and get a Venn diagram of like what do authors in Newfoundland or authors in general have in common. For that one, it turns out like at least half the answers are where the red fern grows. Everyone is just like, that was the first book that made me cry, and I'm like, my God, I've got to find that author if he's alive and bring him on and hold him to account for the trauma he's created.
That is so cute. I can't even think what was the first book that made me cry. I can't. Now you're going to have me on a mission
Mine was
for the
Grover's
rest.
first day of school.
Okay, Grover's first day of school.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
He tries to impress his friends, so he gives away his favorite toy to, like, he's meeting new people, and he gives away his favorite toy and his snack, and he gives away everything that like he loves to try and make people like him, and then he's got nothing that he loves anymore, and he starts to cry, and that just
Oh,
resonates with me. Just giving
that's
away
sweet.
all your energy until you've got none left and not getting any back from people. It's rough.
Well, it sounds like he might go on to become a writer. Oh my gosh, Matthew, we're almost out of time. I just want to say you very quickly as I wrap that you are accepting submissions right now, and people can go on your website. I saw that posted, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you'll come back again and keep us
Anytime.
informed of what you're doing. And guys, we're going to do a little something on Instagram shortly if you want to catch us there. And thank you for watching Let's Get Writing. I'm hoping we're able to share stories and inspiration with you wherever you are. Send us your questions and your comments. We appreciate that. Have a great day. And Matthew, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's get writing.
Let's get writing. We got to go and get writing. Let me just get this shut off now. There we go.